Welcome to our tessellation creation presentation. Let's get started. All right. Now, you've already watched our video and you've taken notes on what was in the video. Now, what kind of patterns did you see in your video? Were your patterns natural objects, like this pineapple? What other natural objects have patterns to them? One thing I can think of is maybe a possum tail or snake skin. Maybe the patterns that you saw were geometric shapes. Like a checkerboard. Maybe the patterns you saw could be put in a building. Like these buildings here. Very elaborate. It's possible that the patterns you saw look like they could go on forever. These specific patterns have representations of lizards. You've got a bat guy and an angel. Now, what kind of pattern do you think this is? That's right, you probably guessed it. It is a tessellation. Now, a tessellation traditionally is a series of polygons placed together with no spaces or gaps. And we're going to see a variation of different kinds of tessellations. They might not be polygons. A little more of the contemporary artists, they tried to play with this idea a lot. Now, some tessellations might even have overlapping in them. The traditional sense of the traditional definition of a tessellation had no overlapping. Like if you had the roof of a house, but you had the other house roof overlapping that. Traditionally, that would not be a tessellation. Now, there are a lot of artists that try to bend those rules a little bit. Now, in this tessellation in our background, we have just one shape. It's a different color. One color is inverted, but this is not always the case. This slide here, we have different sizes of shapes. We have different shapes, and of course they're different colors. See, there are different sizes here. Now, let's test your knowledge a little bit. Do you remember what we said traditionally was a tessellation? Look at this picture here. Can you tell me, in the traditional sense, is this picture a tessellation? Well, let's look a little closer here. Right here we have a little bit of overlap. Right? Look right here, we have a bit of a gap. So since we have those things, in the traditional sense, we cannot call this a tessellation. Traditionally, there are no gaps, no overlaps in the tessellation. Uh-oh. My tessellation's a little sloppy, sorry. Alright. Now let's go back to the origins of our tessellation. Now the word tessera is a Latin word that means small stone cube. They were used to make up tessellata, the mosaic pictures. You see those on floors and tilings on Roman buildings. Now, the Romans would arrange these tiles into scenes, or they would arrange them in geometric patterns. Here we have an example of a bull. This is a depiction on the floor of a Roman building. Now, not all cultures, we're going to find out, put certain objects or people in their mosaics. Alright. Now here's another example of a Roman floor. You can see we have squares, triangles, diamonds, various shapes. Now this was a mosaic men's bath at Herculaneum, Italy. Now this is some Roman tile work. Now, like I said before, a lot of times you could tell what kind of building you're going into by the pictures or the things that were objects that were placed in tile work on the buildings. And this would tell the person passing by what kind of building it is, maybe who lived there. Now next we're going to see that this is not always the case when it comes to tile work, when it comes to mosaics and tile work. We're going to go into Islamic art next. Now Islamic art is quite different. Traditionally, they do not use representational things. There are a few exceptions to this, but in most cases, you do not see people or animals, not like you did with the Romans. Now, the expansion of the Moors from northern Africa brought about these geographic patterns into their buildings. They were brought to Europe through their architecture. Now, Islamic art did not usually depict detailed pictures of objects or people. They believed that enlightened men had knowledge of math and geometry, and that's why they focused so much on their buildings, maybe their temples or their mosques that they would build. Now, what is a Moor? Alright, now the Moors were a mix of Berber, which are kind of like nomadic people, and people of Arabic descent. Now in the 18th century, they conquered the Iberian Peninsula. The Iberian Peninsula would be Italy, parts of Greece. They were finally driven out in their last stronghold in Granada at the end of the 15th century. So there was a large amount of time that they were using, building and using these ideas that they had on tile work, and a lot of them tessellated. Now we're going to go east. This tile work is from the Byzantine Empire. Now, the Byzantine Empire, they took a lot of ideas. They came around much later. They took a lot of ideas from Islamic art, the Roman art, as well as early Christian art. They had lots of different patterns in their art. Now, Byzantine is basically what they call the Eastern Orthodox Church, the empire that encompassed the Eastern Orthodox Church. This is modern-day Turkey, Constantinople. Alright, now we're getting into more contemporary artists here. Now, as you can tell with this picture here, they started kind of breaking with tradition when it came to creating without any gaps or without overlap, as you can see here. Now, this is a specific type of tessellation. We're going to get into that later. Here's another kind of tessellation here. Now, this is a little more linear. Look at this picture here. Kind of a surrealistic picture by a really renowned tessellation artist named Hollister David, also goes by Hop. Now, this is called Seven Birds. Now, look at the birds here. How many birds can you see? Right off the top of your head, give me a number. Alright, now look a little more closely at this, and you will see, first off, you would probably see, you saw 5 birds. Then we go in here, this area here, you can see that we have another bird there. If you zoom in really close in here, you could probably put another bird in there too. This is called a cantor set, right? As you can see. Now, if they decide to go on, this would be the beak of the other bird, and we could go on and on and on and on, as you can see with this pattern here. Now, this is a little more linear than what we've seen with the tile work. They also call this cantor dust. Dust meaning that if you went on long enough, you're going to get to the size of dust and beyond. Now, we're going to suggest that that means infinity here. Alright, here's another example of a cantor set. This is a pillar from Egypt on this column here. One of the early examples of one. Now, here's another picture by Hollister David. Now, if we took the idea of the cantor set and we put it into a spiral, we're going to have a tessellation that looks like this. Again, we could go on infinitely if we had the ability to. So this is called a spiral tessellation. Here's another example. Kind of cute. Alright. Next. Alright, does anyone know what this is? This is actually an object. This is not a computer-generated image. Does anyone know what this is? Well, This is a vegetable. It's called the Romanesco broccoli. Right? You see it comes to a point up here. And you have points here. All these points are on points that are on points. It goes on infinitely. Kind of like this picture here by Salvador Dali that we saw. Now this is a mathematical set that exhibits a repeating pattern that displays on every scale. This is called a fractal. Let's take a look again at our Salvador Dali work. This is a face on a face on a face and a face and a face. This is Salvador Dali's fractal work here. Alright, now we've seen these two pictures already. Now, this is probably the most prolific tessellation maker we know. His name is M.C. Escher. Martyrs Cornelius Escher, born 1898, died 1972. This guy's from the Netherlands. He's a graphic artist. He did a lot of famous projects. He was famous for his impossible pictures. He depicted things that could not possibly happen in nature, as well as the tessellations that we see here. He was always pushing himself to create something interesting, challenging himself. With that, we'll bring this lesson to a close, and I'll introduce your project. Our project we will be making an accordion book, and you're going to make a tessellation. You're going to find two different shapes within that tessellation. You're going to give that shape an object, make it an object. Here you see I've made a squid and also the head of a laughing pig. And I've merged them together in the middle of our accordion book. We'll tessellate. Alright, well, let's proceed to video 2 and where we'll get our instructions.